Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public forum being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 22nd of July. A reminder that this public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Item 2 on the agenda, conflict of interest declarations received. Acting CEO, Ms Squire.
Thank you, Mayor King. One conflict of interest declaration from Councillor Glacken, which is non-pecuniary less than significant in relation to 13.1. This is in relation to the items that will be covered in the public forum agenda. Councillor Glacken has confirmed that her family owns property in the block. She will, however, participate in the debate and vote.
Thank you. Which brings us to our speakers. Our first speaker tonight is in relation to, 3.1 is our first speaker, Diane Thomas, in relation to CM 9.2, non-compliant election signage at council elections. Diane will be speaking against the motion. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to address tonight's public forum. My name is Diane Thomas. I'm an Albury ratepayer, and I was a candidate on the Ross Hamilton ticket at the 2021 election. I'm a registered candidate on the Kevin Mack ticket at the 2024 election. The fact Councillor Cameron has raised this motion, or notice of motion, I should say, at tonight's meeting is the sole reason I've looked further into the matter of non-compliant election signage at New South Wales local government elections, particularly given the experience of Mr Hamilton and myself at the 2021 election. Having made my inquiries based on the content of Councillor Cameron's motion, I've come to two conclusions. The first is that the objections to Mr Hamilton's use of VMS in 2021 were unfounded. And two, that tonight's motion to be moved by Councillor Cameron is not compliant under any legislation cited in the motion or CEO note. The webpage Council Elections 2024 on the Albury Council website was cited in the second last paragraph of the CEO note in the notice of motion. Under displaying election signage and electoral matter of this advice referred to by the CEO to assist election candidates to be aware of requirements in relation to electoral signage, there is one significant error. That advice states, election signage and electoral matter is not permitted on variable message signs. It says this requirement appears under section 184 of the New South Wales Electoral Act 2017. This is incorrect. There's no reference to variable message signs under section 184. There is a reference to authorisation of advertisements on electronic billboards, digital road signs to be displayed in section 187 of the same Act. This section says a person must not, during the regulated period, display any electoral matter on an electoral billboard, digital road sign or other similar device unless the matter contains in visible, legible characters the name and address of an individual on whose instructions the matter was displayed. So in fact, election signage and electoral matter is permitted on variable message signs under the Electoral Act 2017, contrary to the CEO's assertion in this motion. It must contain an authorisation by the responsible candidate in visible legible characters. There is no requirement that planning permission be sought from the relevant council. The same clause as above that I've mentioned appears in Division 9A, Subdivision 3, Section 356GA of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 authorization of advertisements on electronic billboards, digital road signs, etc. to be displayed. Again, VMS are permitted, provided the authorisation is included. I turn next to the CEO note in tonight's motion. In the first paragraph of this note, it is said Council is the appropriate regulatory authority to monitor compliance under applicable planning legislation. I dispute this assertion and would argue that the New South Wales Electoral Act 2017 makes clear the role of the New South Wales Electoral Commission in determining compliance with the relevant legislation. There is no reference here to there being a council role to monitor compliance or electoral posters under planning legislation. This is an assertion made by the Albury Council CEO and Councillor Cameron. At the end of section 184 of the New South Wales Electoral Act, cited by the CEO, there is a note which says, Subdivision 13, election signs of Division 2 of Part 2 of State Environmental Planning Policy, Exempt and Complying Development Codes 2008, provides that the display of election posters is exempt development subject to conditions during the period commencing 5 weeks before and ending 1 week after the election day concerned. Therefore, planning legislation is irrelevant to the display of election posters and material, and the Council's attempt to monitor compliance under this legislation is at best harassment and at worst illegal. I do note the direct contradiction by the CEO, who fails to correctly refer to the same exempt codes within the State Environmental Planning Policy.
Just a note.
Sorry.
The buzzer did go.
Oh,
again,
sorry.
So we do have a few speakers tonight, so I will have to. I was hoping if you were close to finishing, I am close,
but
I think I've already gone about 40 seconds over time. So
summary. In summary, I believe the Council cannot legally determine itself the appropriate regulatory authority in circumstances where there's no reference to local government having any jurisdiction in any planning or environmental legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Thomas, do you concede that if a sign is larger than 0.8 metres square, that it is not subject to the general SEP exemption on electoral signage?
There's no reference in the legislation that I have cited to size.
Well, you might have to look a bit more, I suggest.
But what I'm saying is there are no restrictions on size. It makes reference to digital road signs and variable messaging signs.
Well, if you're here later during the debate, I hope that question will be answered for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, 3.2, Ross Hamilton, in relation to CM 9.2, non-compliant election signage at council elections, speaking against the motion. Good evening, Ross.
Thank you, councillors. Since I've been made aware of this motion, I've been racking my brains of a way to describe it. And the only thing I can think of is abuse of power. I can't see it as anything other than typical closed shop thug behaviour. Now, to be clear, I'm not running in this election. I have no horse in this game, but I want to set the scene for all of the councillors here and cast their mind back to 2021. Like the rest of you, I was running in this election. Several months before the elections, a certain candidate that won a seat on council had placed a rather large electoral ad in Dean Street. This banner was set out before the prescribed period when electoral material was permissible. It was also above the permissible size. Another candidate also used a trailer parked on council roads to advertise. Now, I personally am not trying to make an issue with this. It's simply to contrast what happened next. Within the period of the campaign, I used variable message signs. I had campaign messages approved by the New South Wales Electoral Commission. And I might add, VMS signs were also used in the 2016 election without any issue. Now, shortly after putting up my VMS sign, I received a call from a member of council staff, and I was repeatedly called over coming days, being threatened with significant fines. At first being told that my vehicle that had a vehicle identification number was an unapproved development. Secondly, I was told that based on his interpretation of the Electoral Act, I had to take my sign down. After explaining that I would not be bullied with legalese, a senior member of Albury City Council called me advising the matter would go no further. A couple of days after that, I was again called by another senior member of staff and threatened with a significant fine that I could not afford to pay. I also couldn't afford legal representation at the time, so I decided to give up and take the sign down. Now, in case anyone hasn't joined the dots, several other VMS signs or developments were present around the city at the time, as was the large electoral sign on Dean Street. Nothing was done about these. Now, any journalist worth their salt would FOI the process that led to the selective application of council enforcement, because the only way I can possibly see that happening is if a serving councillor abused their position to take the matter directly to the CEO and compel them to act. If they were any general member of the public like I was, they would have to line up at the service desk like everybody else. And it's hard to see this as anything else than a self-serving act. If you don't think this has any implications on the governance of our city, just take a look at the results of the last election and look how exceptionally thin the margin was for the 9th seat on council. Now, I'm no lawyer, but in this forum, I need to ask whether Albury Council even has the right to decide whether VMS signs can be permitted or not. We do have an independent electoral commission after all. But more importantly, if any sitting councillors intend on running in the upcoming election, it would be improper for them to not leave the chamber when this motion is voted upon, because each and every one of them has a direct financial and political conflict of interest in voting on this motion. If we're to vote on it, we may as well say that only people called Darren can run for office. Now, if it is so important for Councillor Cameron to restrict electoral advertising, I understand he's been on council since.
Just a warning, let's not
I
be
understand
personal,
Councillor
please.
Cameron
That's
has
not-
been on council for a very long
Sorry,
time.
just a point of order. Can we please not make personal references to individual councillors, Mr. Hamilton?
Certainly. I understand Councillor Cameron has been on council for a very long time, certainly since after 2016. I need to ask why this issue has only come up now and directly before an election, when he has had since 2016 to bring it up. I think there are several answers for this. If it is so important, I would submit that there is simply a ploy to avoid criticism when he knows full well that this could actually have been taken to the Electoral Commission or to a court in previous years, and it has not. I would say in this situation, if you're not sure, I would suggest it is improper to vote upon this motion and even bring it up right before an election.
Thank you, Ross. Questions, councillors? Councillor Cameron.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Question to you, Mr. Hamilton. Did you pay for the electoral signage that you used, or was it donated to you?
It was donated.
And did you declare that in your financial disclosures? No, you didn't.
Councillor Cameron,
Uh,
I don't have to answer that question.
Don't answer it.
We have an independent electoral commission and I have passed their audit.
I think you might be hearing some more from them. Anyway.
Noted. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Our next speaker, 3.3, Nat Cross, in relation to CM 13.1, development application for adult entertainment venue, and Nat will be speaking against the recommendation. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors of Albury City, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. In regard to the proposed approval of a strip club in Olive Street, Albury, I ask you to stand true to the Albury Council strategy, a caring community as listed on the Albury City website, and in particular section 3.2. which highlights your support of children and families through prevention of or early intervention into child abuse and domestic abuse. A key outcome of that strategy is that the safety indicators would continuously improve. However, I don't know how these outcomes will be achieved if you approve a strip club in the heart of Albury City. The link between pornography, strip clubs, and adult entertainment venues with explicit content and family and domestic violence and intimate partner sexual violence is undeniable. Multiple studies by leading academics from RMIT and the University of Melbourne have found that women who have experienced family domestic violence or intimate partner sexual violence believe that pornography and sex industry venues such as strip clubs played a role in their abuse. A paper published on SBS Voices in 2017 highlights that sexual entertainment venues make a city a more threatening place for women. Research suggests that the exploitation of women entrenched in the stripper and client relationship extends into the public space and transforms cities into heterosexist environments. Here, women may be expected to mimic aspects of the sex industry and condone men's sexually harassing behaviour. Data sourced from the New South Wales Bureau of Crime and Statistics show that Albury, unfortunately, is now above the state average when it comes to sexual assaults and family and domestic violence. There has been a 17.4% increase in reported incidences over the past 24 months. From April 2023 to March 2024, there have been 448 family and domestic violence incidences and 192 sexual assault incidences reported in Albury. That's just reported. They're the ones that we know of. The numbers would likely be higher because we know that many women will not report these crimes. But these numbers clearly demonstrate that it already is a challenge to make Albury a safe place for children and families. Again, I refer to a caring community 3.2.2. I understand some councillors may be concerned about the cost to council should they vote no. There is a very real cost should you vote no to this. However, I ask, the question that needs to be answered is have you considered the cost should you vote yes? It is the responsibility of the good women and men of Albury City to place the safety and value of all women in our community as the priority in this decision. On the Albury City website, the following is stated: our councillors provide leadership, vision, and set strategic direction, as well as make policy on behalf of and for the benefit of you and our community. To say that morals, as was quoted in the Border Mail last week, was not the only consideration in this process is incorrect. Morals must lead the decision-making process as you are entrusted to make a decision for the benefit of our community. I respectfully ask you, as the elected members of Albury City, to stand up for morals and values and prioritise the safety and dignity of all women in our community and reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Councillors, any questions? Members of the gallery, we've got quite a few speakers tonight, so I understand the passion, but if you could try and refrain a little bit, that'd be appreciated. Councillors, any questions for Nat? Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Our next speaker, 3.4, Lee Walkie, in relation to CM 13.1, development application for adult entertainment venue. Lee will be speaking against the recommendation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor King and fellow councillors and all present. This is not where I thought I would be on a Monday night, but this is an important decision for our community. Absolutely a line in the sand moment. As I'm told, it now rests in our councillors' hands. Each one of you will cast your vote and determine the future of the heart of Albury. So I'm here to talk to you, those that have been elected to look after our city, to shape and create something worthy for us and the future generations. Surely you want to leave your mark, and when your time comes to an end, you can say, Albury is much better because of my wise and caring contribution. Over the last 45 years, our families had many businesses in the Albury City and region. Never have we had to black out our windows from public view. retailers want their products on display. Never have we thought to position our businesses opposite a police station for safety. Our businesses don't encourage crime, violence, or devalue or dishonour women or men. The applicant's desire to emphasise the proximity of the proposed club from the police station when speaking to the media is an implicit recognition of the likelihood of violence. This proposed establishment knows it comes with many proven high-risk factors. That's why the windows need to be blackened, have security on every operating hour, even before and after staff finish. The risk factors are well documented. It's no wonder they want to be opposite a police station. This venue is clearly high risk to employees, high risk to security guards, high risk to patrons, high risk to neighbouring businesses and community, high risk to property values, and the rest. On that basis alone, the Olive Street premises are not suitable. In fact, there is no place in our community. Also, it is diagonally across from the church. It's diagonally across from the conservatorium, metres away from the entrance to Myer City Centre, where Woolworths currently opens till 10 p.m. It's across the road from the much utilised QE2, where so many family events and festivities regularly happen at all times of the day and night. Why should these places have to be concerned with after-dark activities because of this establishment? Councillors, if you allow this venue to set up in Olive Street or anywhere in central Albury, then you are changing the heart of Albury and you are saying yes to a future red light district in our town. Once one establishment sets up, more will come. We deceive ourselves if we think this won't happen. Sadly, it will. The approval of the application will say to the public, the Albury City Council encourages and supports the objectification of women. Strip clubs foster a culture which says to poorly adjusted and immature men, women's bodies are for sale and are for your entertainment. I presume when you took your steps to become our city representatives, you wanted to help shape and enhance our city. That's why we voted you in, because you genuinely care about this city. It's your home too, a home to be proud of. I challenge the thought that morality is not a consideration. The council must consider the social impact of a proposal, and that would almost certainly include an analysis of whether the proposed venue conflicts with community values, standards, and expectations. Community values are a relevant consideration, and that is effectively a proxy for the moral standards of a community. I understand that this venue has passed the planning process. That's disappointing it got this far. Now, our elected councillors are the force to stop this development going forward. I understand it could come at a cost, in court costs. If that's what we have to do, I believe, as do a great many, that this is a fight worth fighting. Most of Albury and surrounds would see this as money well spent. Please vote no. Let's set a precedence for other brave councils wanting to take a stand against such venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Councillors, any questions for Lee? Thank you for your presentation. Our next speaker, 3.5, is Kim Levenveld in relation to CM 13.1, development application for adult entertainment venue. Kim will be speaking against the recommendation. Thank you,
Good
Kim.
evening,
Adjust
Mayor.
that if it's not comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm a bit nervous. I'll try my best. My name is Kim Lerenveld, owner and operator of Milkshake Candle Company, which is directly next door to the opposed strip club in Olive Street. I've owned my business for over 12 years, started when our children were toddlers, and my husband a defence member of 25 years. In 2011, we were posted to the border community while my husband was deployed to Afghanistan. When arriving at a motel, I asked the staff if it was safe to walk around the CBD with 2 young children. They said yes and gave the names of some great coffee shops and restaurants. I wonder what motels and locals would say in the future if this were to be approved. Food for thought. My staff consists of all females plus my husband, with the majority being young female staff. During busy periods, we can have at least 10 staff working at a time. We also provide the opportunity for local students to do work experience with us. We are finalising the details for teaching classes after hours. Our business regularly donates to many local charities and sponsor local sports. My business and the proposed business both share the back car park. The strip club has stated in their plans that they will be erecting a 7-foot chain wire fence, 2 very large and wide swinging gates to the rear of the car park, as well as an 8-metre concrete smoking area for patrons, which is directly behind our rear roller door where my staff and couriers enter and exit regularly. So for any of my staff, particularly young women having to access a roller door, remove rubbish, or having to try and open and close these very large heavy gates during poor weather and light at any time, they will no doubt potentially be exposed to 8 men smoking and intoxicated, which is a recipe for disaster. The plans state that security will arrive half hour before their girls arrive to greet them at the gate and half hour after closing to let them out for safety. Nowhere in these plans has anyone considered our safety. We definitely do not feel safe. Other businesses in our strip of shops mostly park at the SSNA Club or the back of their businesses and use Arnold's Lane to enter their workplaces. A lot of these businesses close late too. It is not uncommon for our staff to be working between 5 a.m. to midnight. Our business makes all products on site and therefore our hours fluctuate from the standard that we advertise. Entry is via our rear roller door, as the front doors to Olive Street are bolted shut at night. The owner of this property collectively owns Olive Health Foods, the strip club in question, Aussie Disposals and the Goddess Emporium, all through Dixon Real Estate. I would never have opened a shop front or signed a lease for 5 years if there was a strip club next to me, ever. We chose this location for the amazing boutique shops surrounding us, Maya Centrepoint, and the large car park we have for our deliveries, an area for staff parking, and the great reputation of businesses in the CBD. Our security cameras constantly alert us that people are around at all hours of the night and morning trying to break in. I was recently alerted that 2 males were scaling our building. I assumed to possibly break into one of the properties, keeping in mind that Aussie Disposals next to us sell knives and hunting equipment. Whilst driving to our store from home, we phoned Albury Police to ask for help. However, they could not attend as they were having a very busy night with problems in the CBD, even though this was a possible break-in happening. Imagine what will happen with the strip club next door. In the supporting documents, it states that as the strip club won't open till 8 p.m. of a night, that there will be no crossover of the public children walking past and seeing what is inside and any community members. This couldn't be further from the truth. Members of the public, including families with children and also elderly residents, are out enjoying our CBD at all hours and will often stop to admire our window displays, which we pride ourselves on and have won a few awards for. Throughout the process of opposing the strip club and the media attention this has received, the stress that this has caused not only myself, my family and my staff, but other local businesses and members of the public is heartbreaking. So many people have told of their stories of being involved in sexual and domestic violence and how this has triggered their PTSD, and have made it very clear that they will not walk down Olive Street or in the vicinity if this goes ahead. Without a doubt, this will destroy businesses. In a cost of living crisis where we're already struggling, we don't need further pressure. This has the potential to cripple us, not only financially, but also mentally. In conclusion, statistics show that every 4 days a female is being murdered in Australia. We as females are already on high alert. Let's not be part of that problem. We do need to do better, and this starts with making decisions based on what is best for our community, not what is best for town planning. We've all read the information relating to the crime and violence associated with these clubs in a CBD setting. The fact that the applicant doesn't have to publicly name the secret investors is questionable. I beg of you today, please don't approve this strip club. Please listen to what our community are asking of you, because without a community united, regional towns will not survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank
You
you.
did a wonderful job.
Made it.
You did a wonderful job. Councillor Callaghan has a question, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you for your presentation this evening, Kim. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you for also welcoming me into your store and taking me on a tour and showing me some of the implications of what the potential DA would mean for your business.
Mm.
If this is to be approved this evening, what would that mean for your business moving forward?
To be honest, I don't know. We've spoken about this numerous times. We're still in a lease. It's not as easy as just moving out. I think when we took on the property, we would have spent close to $50,000 in renovations. The owner obviously has benefited from that. Our customers have benefited. I don't know. I believe that we will have to move. I'm not going to put my staff through that myself. Customers, if customers come past, we would potentially be at a severe financial loss. As to whether we keep our business, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, 3.6, Rachel Hart, in relation to CM 13.1, the development application for adult entertainment venue. Rachel will be speaking against the recommendation as you make your way. Feel free to start at your leisure. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Rachel and I represent Olive Health Foods, a locally owned business that has proudly been serving our local community for 50 years. For the last 40 years, we have been located at 540 Olive Street, right in the heart of Albury CBD. At Olive Health Foods, we employ multiple health professionals. We provide holistic consultations to provide support for mental, emotional and physical health and well-being for our community. Our customer base includes the elderly, the families, vulnerable individuals, and those who are neurodiverse. We are deeply committed to fostering a safe, welcoming, and supportive environment for all of our customers and staff. Even the blocked out windows and minimal signage, the knowledge that a strip club operating next door can be triggering and distressing for many of our customers, particularly those with mental and emotional health concerns. We know our customer base well, and we understand their needs and their sensitivities. The mere presence of such an establishment can create a sense of discomfort and unease, leading to a reduction in foot traffic. The petition we had in store was available for a very short period with no promotion or effort to drive people to it. Despite this, word of mouth and the dissatisfaction of our customers regarding this proposed strip club next door in the heart of Albury led to numerous conversations between customers to our staff about the appropriateness of its locality and the core family and retail activities, not merely based on morality alone. The spontaneous reaction underscored the community's concern and opposition to the strip club. Our regular customers have expressed their concerns, indicating that the presence of a strip club next door will likely deter them from visiting our premises. The introduction of a strip club next door contradicts our values and undermines our efforts to create a positive and nurturing environment. In March of this year, we won Albury Business Women's Grant to extend our services with the focus on mental health in our clinical space. The presence of a strip club, which can negatively impact the mental health of both participants and the surrounding community, directly opposes the work we are doing to support mental health and well-being. We take pride in supporting our community in many ways. We purchase tickets every year for Circus Quirkus, donate to the Young Diggers, contribute to Albury Wodonga business charity events, local charities including local football clubs, as well as support Winter Solstice for mental health. Additionally, we provide work experience opportunities for young people, helping them gain valuable skills and experience. The safety and well-being of our employees are the paramount importance to us. Many of our staff, including junior employees who work after school from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m, have raised significant concerns about their safety, particularly when using the back access. The proposed establishment of the strip club next door heightens these concerns. Despite the presence of security guards at the strip club, their responsibility does not extend to surrounding businesses. The mere fact that security guards are necessary at the strip club underscores the potential for violence and inappropriate behaviour, further jeopardising the safety of our staff who work late hours. Olive Health Foods is more than just a business. We are a vital part of the local community. Our mission to promote health and well-being for all individuals, especially those who are most vulnerable. In conclusion, we strongly oppose this establishment of a strip club next door to Olive Health Foods. We believe that such an establishment is incompatible with the character and needs of our community. We urge the decision makers to consider the long-term impacts on local business, community, safety, and the well-being of its residents.
Thank you, Rachel. Well done. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Rachel, for your presentation. I've had the good fortune of visiting your store as well, and I'm going to ask the same question of you being either side of the proposed development. What does it mean to your business moving forward if this was to be approved?
Look, we've had many conversations. Again, we are also in a lease. I would never, ever have thought that we would be in this position. We would most likely move. We'd have to move. It would cripple us. Our customer base, it would certainly would have to move.
Thank you for your honesty.
Thank you. Next is 3.7, Adam Nicholson, in relation to CM 13.1, development application for adult entertainment venue, speaking against the recommendation. Adam, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Please excuse my voice. My name is Adam Nicholson and I'm the owner of Intersport Albury, located at 520 Olive Street. I'm here tonight to represent the store owners of Olive Street. There is a community that exists between these store owners. We support each other in our day-to-day operation and have done so through the very challenging past few years we have faced as business owners. What we do not need right now is another unnecessary challenge. There is an age-old saying, there's a time and a place for everything. Well, this is not the time, and it is certainly not the place to approve the opening of a strip club. I have to ask, why this location? I encourage you to take a walk down Olive Street tomorrow. Olive Street and the CBD is a family-friendly environment with the majority of staff employed by businesses under the age of 18 working in the existing stores. Teenage staff currently wait for lifts home comfortably at the front of our stores after their shifts, which in summer can finish as late as 8 p.m. or later. Our biggest clientele are families with young school-aged children, and they come in to shop in Olive Street in our store because we offer a safe, family-friendly and age-appropriate environment. They come to my particular store to shop for junior sporting goods, school uniforms and shoes, and family games. If the council is concerned with the cost associated with saying no to this development, I ask that they also be concerned about the cost of saying yes, the cost to existing established businesses. Our stores rely on foot traffic. I believe the opening of a strip club will greatly diminish the relevant customer base of families walking past. Strip clubs do not belong in retail spaces and completely change the amenity of the area. So again, I ask, why Olive Street? Not the time and not the place. Thank you.
Councillors, any questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. Next on our public forum agenda, 3.8, Joanne Diver in relation to CM 13.4, Albury Conservation Zoned Lands Review, Public Exhibition Submissions. Joanne will be speaking against the recommendation.
I'd just like to say that I agree with all of those other speakers prior to me, but unfortunately I'm only allowed to speak to one, so that I will do. Can anybody tell me where the little PowerPoint mover is? So I just go like this, do I? No? Just go like this, okay. All right. So I acknowledge that we live, work and play on Wiradjuri land. They always were and always will be the traditional owners. I identify as custodian of this land, despite the freehold title I have that I will represent here tonight. Consultants were engaged to prepare a report in early 2022, making 455 suggested changes to this conservation zoning. The report went out for public consultation in November 2022. The submissions made to Council have taken 19 months to get to this stage, and I've had 4 days to prepare this presentation, which doesn't give me much time to hear back from ministerial aides, which I haven't done as yet. So there will be questions still I will be unable to answer. If you go to the second one, please. The intent of the Conservation Zoned Lands Review was primarily to identify and amend obvious mapping and zoning anomalies via fieldwork and desktop analysis. My block was not identified within the report. However, Chris Graham said that anyone with conservation zoning could make a submission. I've requested that my conservation zone be downgraded from C2 to C3. Please note that the downgrading of zoning on my block will not decrease the overall gain of conservation zones in Albury. This block has always been privately owned, and as were the surrounding blocks before Crown Lands purchased the land to the north, east and west. Albury City owned the block to the south, which is an extension of the sewage farm. Go to slide 4, please. C2 zones equals government-owned land. Once again, please. C2 zones are described as the transferred lands and other environmental lands in public ownership are proposed to be zoned C2. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. CT zones equals government-owned land. Chris Graham, in front of 100 people at an information session on the 30th of November, confirmed this. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. CT land is government-owned land. Habitat Planning, Matt Johnson, also confirmed this. Great. So you'd think I'd be a shoo-in to get zoned C3 environmental management. It's not government-owned, still provides tight restrictions protecting the environment as per the objectives of the Albury LEP. But wait, there's more. Next slide, please. So let's look at the first objection. My block sits within Nail Can Hill area, primarily zoned C2. If I was zoned C3 as requested, I'd be among friends. Here in Albury City zoning map, you can see where C3 is surrounded primarily by C2 zones, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. And next slide. And here again, no problems here. Next slide, please. And here again, this time at Mungabarina, no problems here either. Next slide. I also argue that the land zone C2 doesn't reflect appropriate land management of the government-owned areas zone C2. North and west of my block, Crown Lands licences are held by the mountain bikers. Sanctioned and unsanctioned tracks introduce weeds, cause erosion, cut down trees, divert waterways, all resulting in habitat loss. Crown Lands doesn't have staff in Albury. The only way to get a hold of them is via a regional email address. They're slow to respond, and the only person that I really trust up there to get anything done is the RFS. In the past 8 years, I've met one member of Crown Land staff. Next slide, please. Alarmingly, Albury City does not have a management plan for Nalcan Hill Zone C2. It hasn't done since the inception of the Albury LAP, as far as I'm aware. Despite repeated promises made to residents, the latest being in September 2021, when Mr. Signage promised me that the plan of management would be put in place within the next 6 months. In the meantime, Council continued to make decisions affecting the Nalcan Hill environment, including mountain biking strategy, without a comprehensive plan of management. Next, please. A network of dense vegetation provides habitat connectivity between Murray River and land further north. So if we go to the next slide, I'll address each one.
Just noting that we've just reached our time, so if you're able to summarise, but we certainly, can speak to it if you can.
Open woodland, not a threatened ecological community. Next slide, please. My block has been seen by an ecological consultant, and he said a regenerated stand with very few hollow-bearing trees, no threatened species observed. Next one, please. Significant areas map, yes, I am included, but so are CT, C3, C4 and RU zones. Next one, please. Streams, no streams on my land, won't affect a block C3. Next one, please. I'm not sure how much habitat is going to get through a degraded sewage area. Next one, please. Okay. So the change of zoning will result in an isolated pocket of C3, which would allow additional land use permissibility not compatible with attributes, ecological value and function of the surrounding areas. These are all the objections I've received. Zoning my block C3 would not result in an isolated block as you've seen previously. Zoning my block C3 is an appropriate zone for a block not owned by government. Zoning my block C3 would not allow additional land use permissibility that would affect zone objectives. It provides for a limited range of development. Any change to future land use would need to be applied for via council and will require consent to proceed. If an application doesn't fit within the land use zone, it's declined. Does Albury City have no faith in their own development consultation process?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joanne. Questions, councillors? A couple. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Thank you for your presentation. Obviously, you had to skip right through that, and I appreciate the comprehensiveness of it all. I'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one for you to go through that with me in further detail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, Councillor Glacken.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask the presenter, thank you for your presentation. Can I ask the presenter why it is that you want C3 rather than C2? If you could just clarify. You've given lots of information around it.
Yep. So all the information I gave around was just to satisfy the objections that I've received. Basically, I'm entitled to C3 because I'm not government owned, and everything reflects back to that. But the objections I received, which I tried to get through as fast as I could, are just answering whatever other objections that they've been able to throw at me.
So it's simply to, through you, Madam Mayor, it's simply to reclassify the land, but for no real purpose. It's just something you want to do.
I want to become C3 because I'm not government owned.
Okay.
There will still be tight regulations the whole way through. No developments are permitted unless I apply to council. And you all decline things regularly. So that's all you have to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Our next presenter, 3.9, Matt Johnson, CM 13.4, Albury Conservation Zoned Lands Review, Public Exhibition Submissions, speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, councillors. Thanks for having me. Is there a presentation that should be up? There was one sent through. I have one on stick. It was sent through when I registered.
Matt, feel free to head to the desk and see if we can resolve that for you.
Thank you, councillors. While that's happening, I can start the presentation. So My name is Matt Johnson. I'm an associate at Habitat Planning. I'm here representing Lincoln Place, who are an aged care land lease community. We're providing a submission in response to the environmental lands review. We represent clients who own land at 7 Catherine Crescent. It's had numerous names over time, but it's been developed for a tourist park since 1979. Here we go. Next slide, please. So our objective is to include the land now as part of the change that we're seeking. So to go from C3 environmental management to R1 general residential. Next slide, please. The purpose of the actual review that would have been in the agenda was the council were looking to seek and resolve some anomalies and some mapping errors that were there, and essentially to try and better align what the environmental values of land were. So at the end of that process, there was a 365 hectare net gain as a result. Next slide, please. The response from the staff in relation to our particular submission on this site was, I've underlined the relevant bits, is that it has merit in terms of reviewing the zoning itself, but just in terms of the scale that we're looking at, the recommendation is that it should be subject to a separate change. So at this stage, there's no change proposed, but the staff have indicated that they would strongly consider a proposal in the future. So next slide. So the site, as I mentioned, it's 8.6 hectares in total, 8 hectares that is environmental. It's a land lease community that's currently used as a tourist park. Next slide, thank you. This is the site, as you can see. 3/4 of the bottom of it is largely fully developed. So these are all 200 to 300 square metre blocks, prefabricated houses running along a north-south spine. There's a central community hub. And at the moment, there's a short-term tourist park in the northwest corner where the trees are. So currently the site, if you go to the next slide, is zoned environmental. But as you can see, looking at that image, and if you go to the next slide, much of this site has been largely developed. So this is a central road with houses either side. There's magnolias that are planted. There's a central community centre with a park. It's mowed, it's lawned. It doesn't contain a lot of environmental features. Next slide. This is the history of the site. So 1979 had its first approval. The most recent approvals it's had has been in the last 10 years, which is basically 175 sites for long-term residents. So this is over 55 type of state, and then 62 short-term sites. Next slide, please. This is just the original master plan that was approved. As you can see, there's largely houses that are all over it. Next slide, thank you. This was the latest approval in 2015. So again, all the yellow sites are the permanent ones. So that's where a house will primarily occupy it. And the purple was where the short-term sites were meant to go. Next slide, thank you. So we did an environmental assessment as part of our submission. It basically came back and said that the flora and fauna values were fairly low on the site. There was about 50% of the trees that were still remaining were exotics and weeds and non-native. And then of those, the ones that were native, there was really only 4 that were really significant that had a hollow bearings that warranted protection, which the owners are more than willing to retain. Also, its context has changed since it was originally zoned. It was primarily meant to be a bit of a north-south corridor going around it. But as you could see in that image before, it's now surrounded by residential estates, industrial estates. It's essentially an isolated site by itself. So despite all that, the owners have been investing a lot in the site. They've been doing landscaping works, revegetation works. They're trying to improve the overall environmental benefit of it. And the report that we had done said that that was okay. Next slide, thank you. So there is a bit of a constraint on it at the moment. Under the current zoning, the owners actually can't further develop it. So as I'll point to out in the future, that there's no real demand for short-term tourism housing, just given that it's no longer along the old Hume Highway route. So they have to operate under what's called existing use rights, which basically prevents them being able to change that quantum. They have to just basically stick to the proportions that they've got. Next slide, thank you. So the economics of it at the moment is 90% of the long-term sites are being sold. So this is for people that want to downsize, but perhaps as a housing affordability thing, can't build a bricks and mortar style house. They're selling at about 1 house a month at the moment, and they're actually getting quite close to running out of their supply. Short-term tourism, as you can see, is only actually about 20%. So there's not a lot of demand because of its location. And the housing, it'll address a housing shortage. So next slide. So as I mentioned, the proposal is to redevelop it in the future subject to a separate DA. Next slide, please. And this is essentially what they would like to do. So The purple that you can see on the slide are trees that are non-native, and the green are the ones, it's a bit hard to tell at this scale. The green ones are the native ones. So primarily they're looking to just retain all of the green ones, as many as they can. And the purple ones, quite a lot of them are just non-native or weeds. So the plan is they've tried to work around the features of the site. Next slide, thank you. So in conclusion, we would ideally like the council laws to include this site now as part of the environmental lands review. Few benefits in terms of that is that if we go down a separate process to have to do a rezoning, you're looking at this better 12, 18-month process, which by then this site will actually run out of homes to service people. The cost of that, you're looking at about $20,000 to $30,000 just in terms of application fees, lodgement, council fees and the like. It avoids having to go back to the state government again. Council's already talking to them now as part of this current review, so it makes sense to just include it now. There'll be a separate DA lodged anyway for this site, so neighbours will get a chance to have a look. And the site itself was already going to be developed for houses. If it's short-term or long-term, it's not really much difference. There's still going to be a building there. A couple other things, we'll add 51 extra houses. And even if we were to reduce the amount of environmental land, you're still looking at over 350 hectares net gain of conservation zone land. So it's not going to tip council below any threshold and they'll still be well in front. And looking at the site, it just logically makes sense or practically just seems to better reflect what the actual values are. So that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you for
councillors.
your presentation. Yeah, that was interesting. Councillor Callaghan, question.
Thank you for your presentation, Matt. Appreciate it. You've really answered some of the things up there in that final summary with 51. My question was how many more affordable homes can be built, and 51 is a substantial amount of homes that could be built considering we're in a housing crisis as well. So yeah, appreciate that. And I have a question during question time when it comes to it for
that's okay.
Mr. Christie. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public forum. Great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 22nd of July. We'll commence with the opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom, and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. A reminder that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. CM3, conflict of interest declarations received and disclosure of political donations. Ms. Squire.
Thank you, Mayor King. Conflict of interest declarations received. So first from Councillor David Thurley in relation to items 13.2 and 13.3. Given his role as a member of the Southern Regional Planning Panel, Councillor Thurley will leave the chamber and not participate in the debate or discussion in relation to those two items. Another from Councillor Glacken in regards to item 13.2 and 13.3, also a member of the Southern Regional Planning Panel, and as a result will not participate in discussion and debate and leave the chamber for those two items. And a further item from Councillor Glacken in relation to item 13.1. So Councillor Glacken has declared that her family owns property in the block in relation to this DA, but she will participate in the debate and vote. Thank you, Mayor King. That's all for the conflict of interest declarations. In terms of disclosures, the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, Section 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. The forms are also available at the back of the chamber during council meetings. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A, requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you. CM4 apology, CM 4.1. Councillor Bettridge.
Through Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council receive, note and accept the apology of Councillor Bowen and Councillor Edwards and grant leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll put that motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. CM 4.2, attendance by councillors at meeting by audio-visual link. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that the council receive and note the acceptance and attendance of Councillor Baker via audio-visual link for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. I'll put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM 5, mayoral minute, we have none. CM 6, action plans. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress, and 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Any person wish to speak to any of those items under action plans? If not, happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM 7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 8th of July, 2024 at 6 p.m. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, Mayor King, to move the recommendation as a motion that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 8 July 2024 at 6 p.m. be confirmed and adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. If there's no speakers in relation to the minutes, I will put that motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM 8, reports from community forums. We have none. CM 9, notices of motion, notices of rescission. CM 9.1, notice of motion, New South Wales shared e-scooter trial program. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that in accordance with clause 9.4 of the e-scooter operator agreement between Beam and Albury City, council give 30 days notice of the termination of the agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. I will briefly. it was reasonable to try this experiment, I think. But in my view, the experiment, and I believe in the view of the majority of people of Albury, this experiment has been a failure. These things add nothing economically to our city. They provide the ratepayers with no additional income at all. They destroy the amenity of the city, and they prove to be particularly unpopular. And I have lost faith in them. I cannot see that they are providing any clear benefit beyond amusement rides for drunken people. I think that a better solution, of course, is that the state government should legislate to allow private ownership of e-scooters. Then people would get all the touted benefits of them in terms of removing people from motor vehicles, because according to the new religion that's sweeping our city, apparently, motor vehicles are evil and bad. And they wouldn't, of course, be left all around the place and would be looked after and garaged appropriately. So that's a much better way forward. Councillors don't want to support this, so I accept that. You know, it's about democracy. But councillors also have an election to go through. Some of us have an election to go through in about 6 weeks. And I would say that it would behoove councillors to inform themselves of what the majority view in our city is. And I'm in no doubt that the majority view is that these things should go. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I speak in opposition to the motion before us this evening. To terminate the e-scooter trial before the completion of the 12-month trial period would be short-sighted, as we would not gain access to the comprehensive data that we would need to make an informed decision as to the potential extension of the trial or termination based on usage and impacts over a full calendar year. The suitability of the delivery model could be assessed with improvements recommended to Transport for New South Wales and Beam Mobility Australia. As an example, provision of docking stations to minimise haphazard storage at end of journey. The trial has seen a large uptake in use of this alternative transport option. And yes, there has been some negative aspects highlighted, but overall the trial is operating well. And I would hope that the data collected will help authorities come to the decision that privately owned e-scooters will be able to enjoy similar access to our roads and paths as has been afforded to the trial scooters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bettridge. No speakers for. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, I think the trial needs to continue so that we get the best data, as Councillor Bettridge has said. Yes, there have been problems, and I have a number of ratepayers who contacted me regularly, but the good thing is they also contact Beam and provide the feedback to Beam. Yes, leaving them laying on footpaths is one of the biggest problems we've had, but I dispute Councillor Cameron's assertion that the main beneficiaries of these have been drunken scooter riders. There have been tens of thousands of trips made by people, and I do believe that the government should legislate that people can privately own an e-scooter, and then we wouldn't have this issue at all. If you own one, you'd look after it. Mostly they are looked after, and I note that Beam is now implementing a number of other measures to counter issues such as drunken use of these vehicles with a particular app that they are able to use. So I would like the trial to continue so that we get the best possible data. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. There is much to be said about the confusion of e-scooters in Australia, with many safety concerns and legislative challenges from state to state, and varied and confusing rules which guide the e-scooters. This is an example, I think, of technology moving faster than the lawmakers in our society. Locally, Beam have been a success in relation to high usage. It has been less successful in the way scooters, however, it has been less successful in the way scooters are managed. Understanding that there is a trial period, there could be many improvements made, and I hope that Beam are looking to make these improvements. Scooters should not be left on paths. Designated parking bays should be provided to promote orderly parking and reduce the chaos on and around the footpaths. Beam should be able to provide the city, like the City of Hobart currently, and it should be adopted by Albury. They have some examples where they use parking bays, and it makes for a much more orderly looking city. They should provide e-scooter options that appeal to a broader range of users. Allowing geofencing to access the track networks from Thurgoona into East Albury would stop a large amount of dumping. Scooters should be located in business areas or public spaces, not out the front of private residences. An example of this is the corner of Guinea and Olive Street. This is not appropriate. They could be at the petrol station 30 metres up the road. And Beam should be more vigilant about the monitoring of their fleet. However, we are the second most car-dependent city in Australia, and our public transport is inadequate to meet the needs of our community. And this is a positive move in the right direction. The Victorian government have recently announced it would allow share hire e-scooters to operate across Victoria and is making new rules for e-scooters to make them safer and working with the TAC from October 24th. And New South Wales won't be far behind. I agree with Councillor Cameron that the state government should legislate private ownership and use. Until then, there is an overall benefit to the community with Beam. I am not surprised that Wollongong and Albury fare as the highest users, as both are university towns and they appeal to a younger demographic. E-scooters are here to stay. They make the community more accessible for younger people, those unable to own their own car, and it is a green way to move around the city, given the rise in petrol prices. Albury requires further bike lanes to fully support safer cohesion between users and e-scooters and their drivers, and this is clearly also beneficial to bike riders as well. It is in line with our adopted MOVE strategy, and I'll support the continued trial of the e-scooters in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can't agree with this motion from Councillor Cameron because if you follow the premise, as was raised in his introduction to the topic this evening, there are too many drunk people using e-scooters. If that were the case, then we would also have to ban cars because unfortunately some people do drink and drive, but we don't ban cars. I do appreciate the information from Councillor Cameron that ratepayers are not benefiting financially from the trial, but there are many instances where ratepayers don't benefit from numerous activities that are undertaken in the city in the short term. The reality is that the trial is raising the profile of Albury City. It has allowed many people an opportunity, a form of transport, as in a form of transport, that is not otherwise available to them. And I have heard instances where people are able to get to work for the first time because they have access to a transport that is not public transport. And it does indeed fill the gap between public and other private forms of transport. It's also part of the relationship that we have with other regional cities. Albury is not an island in New South Wales. We are part of a local government group and we need to work with the state government over a number of initiatives to trial, and other cities do as well, other regional areas do, to trial all sorts of things as they come or become apparent as opportunities for our communities. I do agree that we need to encourage the government to allow people to own and operate their own e-scooters and other electric mobility forms of transport. But this trial is a significant part of moving forward with that because it will provide us with the research, as has been raised by a couple of other councillors here this evening. It will allow that research to be done and undertaken by us, Albury City, and by our community, by the providers of the Beam scooters, as well as the New South Wales government. And they need to undertake that prior to legislating how e-scooters will be utilised either publicly or privately within New South Wales. So it's a win for Albury City and our community, and a win for the New South Wales government to allow this trial to continue, to gather the data, to have those experiences that they can then work towards with the legislation. And I note that the Victorian government has just announced their work with e-scooters and how they're going to be dealing with the private ownership of e-scooters in their state. It is, as at least one councillor has mentioned, a highly successful trial with an enormous number of trips and kilometres travelled. We have signed up for a 12-month trial, and I think we need to see that through. We need to work with the trial providers and the New South Wales government. And I think a couple of areas where they could learn from and have been raised previously, they just need to be a little more, listen a little harder to what the community is saying and what we as a council say. They need to increase their enforcement and provide parking signage. The suggestion that they have parking lots or parking bays has been raised on a number of occasions, yet we do not have any designated signage for parking bays within Albury City Council. I also think that there needs to be increased communication about not drinking and then scootering, about the age restrictions, about not riding on footpaths. That's one of the greatest offences or the most significant offences we have in town, and that they wear helmets. The riding on footpaths, many people see other scooter riders riding on footpaths and so they think it's permissible. Somehow we need to get the message across that it is not permissible to ride on footpaths. You need to ride on the roads. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. No further speakers. Councillor Cameron, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mayor King. If councillors don't want to do this, that's their prerogative. But what I would say to councillors is that this council brought in these things, and it should, in my view, be this council that decides whether they stay or whether they go. And to put this off for a further few months is to put that burden on a new council, an incoming council. And there is no guarantee that any of us will be here on that new council. We made this mess. We should clean it up. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I'll put that motion. Those for?
Oh, sorry.
Those against? That motion is lost. Thank you, councillors. CM 9.2, Notice of Motion, Non-Compliant Election Signage at Council Elections. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that Council A resolves to adopt a zero tolerance approach to non-conforming signage during elections where council is the appropriate regulatory authority. B, specifically, the council requests the CEO to ensure that the enforcement action occurs as soon as practicable and legally possible after an initial warning is issued for the use of non-compliant signage. C, that council also requests the CEO to ensure that public advertisements are placed locally to remind candidates of their responsibilities.
Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd be happy to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. Notwithstanding the presentations earlier from a couple of speakers, which rather reminded me of Dennis Denuto in the great Australian film The Castle in terms of their pseudo-legal arguments and the free character assessment of my good self, of course. The reality is that there is a general exemption. This is about planning law, which is council's purview. It's about the need to have a development application approval or consent from the regulator, which is council, if the signage is not within the confines of the SEP exemptions generally for electoral signage. The way it works is normally you need approval to put up signage generally. In an election period for electoral signage, you do not, provided that it is within the confines of the SEPs, the two SEPs. And one of those key criteria is a surface area of less than 0.8 square metres. For that reason, unless you have a development application, in which case they're quite permissible, or if you have permission from council, in which case they're quite permissible, they are not permissible and you require development approval. Last election, it's a matter of record, and it was admitted here again tonight, that these were used by one group and one group only, and that went on for 7 days. 7 days, that group benefited from illegal signage advertisements. Council's enforcement actions in that case should have been much quicker, given that it was an election period. And the purpose of this motion has one intent only, and that is to ensure that everybody at the next election and in subsequent elections is on a level playing field. If people want to use these signs, they need to put in a development application or otherwise gain consent for them. Otherwise, they cannot use them. I think councillors too, or aspiring councillors, must at least make an effort to inform themselves of what is the appropriate law. How can you run for a council position in a city and refuse to acknowledge what planning law is and what the planning effects of the planning law are? That's a really confronting proposition. Likewise, there are extremely rigorous reporting requirements for expenditure, donations, and a whole range of disclosures that must be carried out. And the penalties for breaching those are quite serious. One of those is that if you receive donations of goods or services, you must declare that. The other requirement, interestingly, is that certain people are prohibited from being donors, and to accept a donation from a prohibited donor is a very serious offence indeed. Prohibited donors include people, for example, who might be licensees, or people who might be a developer or in a close relationship with a property developer, for example. People who are going to run for council or people who aspire to serve on council have a moral responsibility to the people of the city to make sure they at least inform themselves of the law and that they obey that law and they follow the disclosure laws. They are complex, they are onerous, but it's not an excuse. If you can't handle it intellectually, you shouldn't be running. This motion, Madam Mayor, seeks to make sure that there's not a repeat of the unfair use of illegal signage that we saw at the last election. Thank you.
You, Councillor Cameron. Any other speakers for or questions? In that case, we'll put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM10, presentations and deputations. We have none. CM11, reports, minutes of committees and working parties. We have none. CM12, documents for sealing. We have none. CM13, officers' reports for consideration. CM13.1, development application 10.2023.4043.1, change of use, internal fit out and signage for restricted premises, adult entertainment venue at 542 Olive Street, Albury. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I wish to move an alternative motion to that one on the board. Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives and notes the contents of this report, and B refuses to grant consent to development application 10.2023.40430.1 for change of use and internal fit out for restricted premises, adult entertainment venue at 542 Olive Street, Albury, for the following reasons. C1, the development does not comply with the provisions of Albury Development Control Plan 2010 Part 11, development in the commercial zones with particular reference to the objectives of Part 11 and the requirements of Part 11.7.2, land use precincts Albury. 1, land uses are to comply with the land use plan contained in figure 11.7 and the land use table contained within the LEP, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(a)(3) of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. 2, the development will have an adverse impact upon the amenity of the surrounding area, as well as increased noise generation in proximity to residential apartments, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(b) of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act 1979. 3, the development will have an adverse social impact upon the surrounding area, as well as no specific consideration has been provided for the potential social impact of the introduction of an adult entertainment venue to the locality, such as the potential loss of community safety and entitlement of public space in the immediate vicinity of the venue, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(b) of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. 4, the subject site is not considered suitable due to its proximity to residential premises, as well as public open space, community facilities, a music school and other places where vulnerable persons will frequent, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(c) in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. And 5, the development will have an adverse impact upon the amenity of the surrounding area and increased noise generation in proximity to residential apartments, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(d) of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second that motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. I really don't need to add a lot to the what the speakers made in their addresses to us tonight. They very comprehensively covered the issues that I'm considering here. I do, however, want to add a couple of things. We know, of course, that violence against women is at an all-time high, and there is no doubt in my mind that venues such as this promote or at least increase the likelihood of such things to occur. I was completely shocked when we first got this application to hear that some of the intended beneficiaries of this would be end-of-season footy trips. Well, that's fantastic. I can remember a rugby player arrested in the United States on such an event. I can remember a rugby player in Australia arrested for such an offence occurring as a result of something like this. There is no doubt it promotes bad behaviour. Even if it got approved, to have the smoking area at the back, you mean a smoking and urination area, surely, with loud noise, probably vomiting as well by the time you get to 3 a.m. It has nothing good going for it, in my opinion, and all of the environmental reasons given in that motion are valid, but the reasons we heard from our members of our community tonight are even more valid. And there are other issues that are not even considered here, such as women trafficking. Just have a look in the Border Mail every day. There's one in there today, hot busty Thai lady. This is something that just opens up the market for people who wish to profit from the at the expense of women. So I'm totally opposed to this, and I hope my councillors support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Councillor Thurley, for moving the alternative motion. The community have spoken and they do not want an adult entertainment premises in their CBD. I've personally visited local retailers to garner further understanding around why this highly inappropriate site has come, and I've come to the conclusion that it is not in the vision for Albury and its future. It is at the entry to a major shopping centre where thousands of people enter on a daily basis. It is in close proximity to 3 schools, Albury Public School, Murray Conservatorium and Aspect School, all of which are on the same street. It is also close to St Matthew's and St David's Church, both places of worship. It is a stone's throw to our QE2 Square, where Albury City Council hold many formal and informal community-focused events. It is in very close proximity to the shop top housing, with 2 apartments being less than 18 metres from the proposed development. One business owner is expected to share their back entryway with the smoking area and all the other things that may potentially happen, and this is totally inappropriate. The development in itself is absurd. I'm astonished at the recommendation to approve this development application. Albury City Council must make an amendment to the DCP to make sure that the CBD zoning is protected in perpetuity from establishments that will diminish the social cohesiveness and amenity of the CBD. The vision for Albury 2050, as mentioned here this evening, is one of a caring and leading community, one that will grow a sustainable economy, a welcoming community that has an emphasis on the physical, mental and spiritual well-being of our people, that our community is a safe place, that we engage and have strong relationships with our people. The CBD of Albury is a family-friendly environment that encourages activities and businesses that are suitable for all ages. An adult entertainment venue will deter many women and families from this area. The presence of such a venue will discourage other businesses, as we have heard this evening, from setting up in the area, particularly those that cater to families and mainstream consumers, thus having a detrimental impact on the local economy. Although safety and crime are not planning requirements, they must be considered in the vision for what we want for our community. There are strong concerns about an increase in crime, such as drug use, violence and antisocial behaviours associated with an adult entertainment venue. This could strain our already stretched local law enforcement resources and reduce the overall sense of safety within our CBD. Locally, there are on average 33 reports to the police in regards to domestic violence per month. On a national level, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese declared in May that we're in a national crisis, with one woman being killed every 4 days. Approving an adult entertainment premises does nothing to support respect for women in our community. A report by the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women Australia argues that strip clubs need to be understood as part of the industry of prostitution and regulated in the same way as brothels. This means that they would be licensed subject to planning restrictions and owners would need criminal record checks. Rather than being separate, strip clubs and prostitution are interconnected. To ensure that strip clubs are not seen merely as entertainment venues like nightclubs, they should be regulated as commercial sex venues. The proposed development in 542 Olive Street will have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring properties. It will be detrimental to the character and amenity of Olive Street and the core CBD. We have a duty to keep our community safe and uphold the reputation of Albury. This venue is in the wrong spot and has no place in the CBD of our community. In the words of Adam Nicholson from Intersport, there is a time and a place for everything, not now and not here. I do not support the development for the adult entertainment. Thank you.
Speaker against, Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to speak against the motion before us this evening. The provision of an adult entertainment venue in the City of Albury is, to say the least, controversial. Having read the report and attachments, it is clear to me that if we remove the morality concerns and focus on the appropriateness of this development in an E2 commercial core zone, we have no other option than to approve this development application. The imposition of appropriate conditions in the draft determination, as well as the noise impact assessment, venue management plan, and the 2-year trial period from the issue of any occupation certificate, gives me the comfort that this enterprise is suitably controlled and has the capacity to be reviewed if it does not adhere to those conditions. That is why I'm speaking against the motion before us this evening, and I will foreshadow the recommendation in the report if this motion is defeated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaker 4, order please in the gallery. Speaker 4, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to support Councillor Thurley's motion. And many of the points in the alternative motion that he puts forward are indeed points that I would like to raise tonight. I don't personally agree with such a venue or such venues, but I can't vote against this DA on those grounds. They are a legal business and they have a legal right to put forward their development application. And that was, or that is why our staff have dealt with it under planning requirements. And that is that it largely, they believe, meet our planning requirements and should be permissible in the CBD. However, I think there's a number of areas, and most of these have been in the motion being put forward by Councillor Thurley, a number of areas where I believe this DA does not meet our requirements planning-wise in our city. So moving aside from my own personal moral beliefs. It's well known that businesses tend to congregate as like offerings. We get bulky goods centres. We also have a precinct of similar offerings every now and then, including restaurants. People will pitch up next to a competitor, or we heard tonight that there are groups of shops in Olive Street that have co-located because they believe they have a vested interest in doing so. That is a recognised retail business strategy. I'm not convinced that the Adult Entertainment Centre is part of that recognised business strategy in that location. If this was allowed, it would create a precedent, and I don't believe that's easily reversible, if at all. Noise is one of the greatest concerns that I have. Noise inside, in the smoking area, outside, and to and from. We read in the report that there's a requirement for double doors at the front of the premises, but I don't see that for the back of the premises, where the smokers will go out. On page 62, there's a reference in the report, noise impacts are likely to be minimal. On what basis are they likely to be minimal? They're going to install signs in the property. It's not possible to control people, let alone the noise they make, in a smoking area, an outdoor area, or them coming to and from the facility. There'll be full-time guards, but will there be a full-time guard out in the smoking area? And will it be, you can only smoke, you can't talk? Is that really possible? I don't think it's possible to control the noise coming to or from or in that outdoor area. I don't think it's possible to control the noise fully, noting that there is no indication of a double door at the back, and the building itself, the structure, was not created to minimise noise. And whilst there is talk in the report about the draft condition, or in the draft conditions, about doors, double doors, the thickness of the glass, the seals, it doesn't deal with the ceiling and the roof, where noise will also emit. We have been, over a number of years, encouraging the revitalisation of our CBD, and we've been encouraging shop-top housing. We've been encouraging people to build residential developments within our CBD to enhance the vibrancy in a positive way. Page 57 of the report states that the development should not generate unreasonable noise. I don't agree with that. Another pointer in fact it's point CI, is that it does not meet the Albury DCP 2010, part 11.7.2, which deals with the land use precincts. It's not part of a retail restaurant sector. While I can't support this development or disallow this development, vote against on moral grounds, I don't support it because it doesn't meet our planning requirements.
Thank you, Councillor Blacken. I believe your time might nearly be up.
I request an extension, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The report cites a case where approval was granted in another city, in another instance, as residents were 75 or 90 metres away. In this instance, they're considerably closer, and I think one of the councillors has already raised that distance. It was also stated in the report that the SSNA Club, the Bended Elbow Public House, are all in a reasonable distance. However, they are not adult entertainment venues. They're licensed premises, but they're not adult entertainment venues. Page 48, we are given the information that the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design report cited that there will be a controlled access via the entry and exit points. And the report, or the part of the report that's in our report, is that I'm sure this will be well maintained. However, the people who have made objections to council about the development are told in page 44 that they cannot assume something will happen. There has to be a real chance of that possibility happening. So I wonder, why is it that the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design are allowed to make assumptions, but the people making representation to Albury City Council are not allowed to make assumptions that it will be noisy or not pleasant. Should this motion of Councillor Thurley's not get up, then I would really not be very happy with a 2-year suggested trial period, because if it was to be approved, which I hope it isn't, I would only wish that it should be at most a 12-month trial period. The scooters were a 12-month trial period. 2 years, if it's not going very well, is a very long time. And I really wonder about the number of patrons. At one stage, there was a request from the developer that there would be 150 people inside. It then went down to something like 80. And now the report is indicating that it would be 60 people. How on earth would they be able to fit 60 people in? I really wonder, are they able to self-determine the number of people in their venue? The diagrams that we see in our report don't have tables or chairs. They just have a size of a floor in the main room that's 6.3 metres. Or perhaps I've read the report incorrectly. I'm not convinced that 60 people can fit into that venue. Madam Mayor, I support Councillor Thurley's motion. I thank him for that alternative motion because it enables me to vote against this development application on the grounds that I, as a councillor, am able to do, and that is on planning grounds. Thank you very much.
Just noticing, Councillor Baker, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor King. I'm also, I've been uneasy about this since we first heard the news that there was a strip club proposed in that premises. I'm really pleased that this council is getting the opportunity to decide, and it's not just a matter for the planning department. It has slipped through the first check, which was the landlord check. I think a landlord really has the opportunity to say yes or no, and given that that landlord owns a number of businesses around this proposed venue, I think, you know, that's the first check. It went through there. And then next to the planning department, where I understand how they've made that decision, but I very much agree with the motion put forward by Councillor Thurley, and I'm very pleased to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Cameron.
Me? Thank you, Mayor King. Sorry, I couldn't hear you over the applause. I'll be brief. Most of the other councillors have articulated what I think also. For me, this is all about destruction of amenity for the surrounding businesses and accommodations and schools. It is also about just being in completely the wrong area. As was referenced earlier tonight, I have been on council for some time, and I had a term in the 90s also. And you never cease to be amazed sometimes. If you were going to bring an application for a premise where sex work is conducted, and I make no moral judgments about that, I'll leave that out of it, but wouldn't you do that in a vicinity where existing businesses of that type operate? And to think that you could get cooperation from a sitting council or the population generally that elect the council to have it in the CBD next to people's existing, often feminine focused businesses is just beggars belief, frankly. I have had no, as opposed to those who are opposed to this, who have been very communicative and have represented their views marvellously tonight and over the last period of weeks. I have seen little, if any, support for this project other than those who are members of what I would describe as neo-Nazi fringe political movements that seem to advocate that we should have some sort of society based on Darwinism where everybody does what they want and the strong prosper and the weak fall away. Well, I don't believe that. I believe in social democracy. I believe in a community where we care for each other, where we take appropriate action to try and ensure safety for people, particularly those who are vulnerable, women, younger women, older women, particularly. And accordingly, I would never support such a proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate? Thank you, councillors. Therefore, we'll put the motion, councillors. Those for? In division, councillors Baker, Thurley, Callaghan, King, Cameron and Glacken. And those against? Councillor Bettridge. Thank you, councillors. That motion is carried. We will have a couple of councillors leave the chamber for this next item. So if anyone feels they also need to leave the chamber, feel free for that. This is item CM 13.2, development application. Yeah. So in relation to this item, so we will adjourn for a few minutes, given that we've had a long period of time in the chamber. So while we clear the chamber, we'll return very shortly in a few minutes' time. So it's just a matter of so the other thing is we really need to get if it's too difficult because I had time for 5 minutes and so I wasn't able to present appropriately. Yeah, it should be. I've seen lots of vaccines that just like just up there, so if we can get that happening before our next one, that'd be great. It's just a matter of no, I cannot find. Yeah, happy to see it. Yeah, okay, thanks. I'll give you a call. Yeah. Sorry for the delay, folks. We are getting back on track. Noting that we are up to a CM 13.2, noting that councillors Glacken and Thurley have left the chamber. They've declared a conflict. This is in relation to development application 10.2024.40795.1, industrial development factory and warehouse for plastic film recycling facility at 24 McLaurin Road, Etamoga, consideration of submission to Southern Regional Planning Panel. Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you. Through Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council A receives the contents of this report and determines to not make a separate submission to the Southern Regional Planning Panel in relation to development application 10.2024.4079.5.1 for industrial development factory warehouse, associated office and amenities, car park and signage for plastic film recycling facility on land situated at 24 McLaurin Road, Etamoga.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it?
King, I'm happy for it to just be put to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it, Councillor Callaghan? Sorry.
Just briefly. Yeah, it's all right.
Sorry.
Thank you. This development is significant and is a welcome addition to the Nexus precinct. This type of development will employ our community and fulfil a role in our green circular economy. The facility will divert 15,000 tonnes of low-density polyethylene plastic from landfill each year. This is also in line with our newly announced hard waste soft plastic program launch, with an extra 12,000 households across Albury, Wodonga, Indigo and Alpine councils now being able to recycle their soft plastics after a successful trial period. The factory will create environmental, economic and social benefits for our local and regional community, but also for Australia and for generations to come. I'm happy to support this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Any other speakers for or against? Happy to then put the motion in division. Councillors, those for, councillors Baker, Callaghan, King, Bettridge and Cameron. That motion has passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move into item CM 13.3, noting that Councillor Glacken and Thurley are also still removed from the chamber as they have declared a conflict. This is in relation to development application 10.2024.4051.1, industrial development warehouse at 21 McLaurin Road, Etamoga, consideration of submission to the Southern Regional Planning Panel. Do we have a mover, councillors? Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B determines if Council is to make a separate submission to the Southern Regional Planning Panel in relation to development application 10.2024.40751.1 for industrial development, warehouse, associated offices and amenities, car park, earthworks and signage on land situated on 21 McLaurin Road, Etamoga, Lot 2, DP 1276039. Thank you.
You, Councillor Callaghan. Just to clarify, do you intend it to be similar to the previous motion where that council did not make a separate submission, or would you prefer to make a submission?
No.
Just to clarify, so part B, just add that council does not make a separate submission. So just noticing that technicality for us. Thank you. Councillor Bettridge.
Very happy to second the motion before us, Mayor King.
Thank you. Any speakers for or against? In that case, happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for? In division, correct? Sorry, thanks for the reminder. Councillors Baker, Callaghan, King, Bettridge and Cameron, and that motion is carried unanimously. And we will allow Councillor Glacken and Thurley to return to the chamber before we address our next agenda item. Noting that councillors Glacken and Thurley have re-entered the chamber. as we head to CM 13.4, Conservation Zoned Lands Review Public Exhibition Submissions. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that Council A, receive and note the feedback received through public exhibition. B, endorse the planning proposal Albury Conservation Zone Lands Review as exhibited, subject to those recommended amendments as consolidated in attachment 3. And C, provide this report and other relevant information to New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, or delegate to the Minister of Planning in accordance with the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, EP and A Act, to enable finalisation processes and the making of the amendment to the Albury Local Environmental Plan 2010, inclusive of recommended amendments as consolidated in attachment 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Can I just clarify, you may have had an alternate motion at one stage?
I have 2 alternate motions. I'd
so-
just like to ask a question of a staff member before I move the alternate
Oh, okay.
to see
Well,
which way
okay.
I'd like to go.
I'll get a seconder
Yeah, thank
first
you.
for this motion then. Is there a seconder for this particular motion? Councillor Bettridge.
Be the second motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
May I ask a question, please? Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, to the most relevant staff member. We had a presentation earlier. Thank you, Matt Johnson from Habitat Planning, and it was in regards to an addition or at 7 Catherine Crescent. Is it possible to include that in the current Conservation Zone Land Review?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. Our opinion as staff has noted forward was that overall, while it might have been a significant quantum in terms of area, I believe the area, the size is about 8 hectares, if I recollect the presentation correctly. It was a site that was not identified in the original exhibited, and so therefore any other interested community members, adjoining landowners, etc., would not have an opportunity to comment on the inclusion of that in. Hence, our recommendation was that it was more appropriate to deal with it through a separate process to this, whether that be our separate LEP review or any other process that may be appropriate process.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
Thank you. If this was to go out to community consultation again, could it then be incorporated into the review?
Mr. Christie?
Yep, thank you for the question. And for you, Mayor King, if council was to resolve to re-exhibit the entire planning proposal as part of this to incorporate that, then that may, but obviously would have the consequence of delaying council's consideration of the planning proposal that's before them in regards to that.
Thank you. We do have a question, or do you want to speak to your motion first? You'll reserve. Councillor Glacken, question.
Yes, my question is on similar lines with reference to the Nail Can Hill area, the C2 wishing to be C3, and the Catherine Crescent area as well. And I understand that it would delay the process if we were to take this to community consultation again to be able to incorporate this. However, what are the time constraints, the cost constraints, and the staffing constraints should we approve this tonight and then deal with those other two separately, to the staffing constraints and also to cost to both of those people? And prior to answering that, Madam Mayor, is it possible to get some feedback on the Nail Can Hill area and staff's consideration with that? Thank you.
Mr. Christie?
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King, if it pleases the council, I'll answer the second part first and then answer the implications for the entire project second. So in regards to the inclusion of the area through in there to include it as rezone it as C3 rather than keep it currently as C2. As outlined in the report, it's our staff recommendation that it remain C2 for a variety of reasons. One of those is that, one, it is surrounded by C2 land at the moment, so it's not at the edge where there are a number of the examples where it would transition. It is surrounded by existing C2 land. While it is true that the vast majority and C2 land is government owned, it's not an exclusivity that it has to be government owned. There are numbers of parcels of land owned by council, for example, which is considered government, that are zoned C3 or are zoned other zones. So it wasn't the sole determinant, but the relationships between the land and the attributes of the land meant that the vast majority of land that was zoned C2, which covered vast areas around our hillsides, such as Nalcan Hill, were generally in government ownership. So that was a contributing or common factor between the vast majority of that land, but wasn't the sole determining factor as to whether land was owned C2 or for C3.
With reference to, may I ask a clarifying question, Madam Mayor, with reference to that answer and that specific zoning?
Of course.
Before we get to the second part. So with reference to that specific land, that it is C2 and the descriptor says that it is government land, is it simply really, at the end of the day, the descriptor that is driving the need or the desire to change from C2 to C3? And is it simply a descriptor that we've got on our plan, but it's not necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily be the descriptor used on all of the maps?
Thanks for the question. And for you, Mayor King, obviously I'll talk to council's designation of zoning, which is what I spoke to earlier, which is that generally the attributes of the land that we zone C2 generally happen to be actually owned by departments, various departments and council and government agencies, and therefore generally had those attributes and have been maintained in common practice and land management. Zoning is generally tenure blind. It's not related to ownership of land. So there are a variety of lands where there can be different ownerships, but have very similar and the same zonings in that respect.
Thank you.
In this case, as I said before, our recommendation was on the basis that it was surrounded by C2 land, therefore consistent with the land surrounding it. There also was some initial feedback from the ecological consultants that there are some additional land uses that can occur in C3 land. And so they were concerned around what might be the impacts of that.
Okay, thank you very much. That clarifies that first part for me. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, for you, Mayor King, in regards to the first part of the question, in regards to the addition of the land, there is a little bit of a nuance difference between land that might have been proposed to be changed, such as there's a number of recommendations where we're looking at altering some of the suggested areas, but those areas were already identified as around the scale of those areas and change, as opposed to the addition of totally new areas or totally new sites, and then whether that's appropriate to go through this planning process or not. And that's where I defer to my earlier answer around the community consultation of this, which isn't obviously just for affected landowners. It's for government agencies, it's for other interested community members, not just obviously individual landowners, whether they're council, whether they're private landowners. And introduction of new parcels of land without re-exhibiting would create that concern around the transparency of the exhibition process, make certain everyone had an opportunity. Now, we do require state government permission to go through these planning processes, which is why they take so long. This process started in 2018 with the appointment of the consultants, and there was a large amount of environmental work has occurred since then, which had some delays for a variety of factors. Got permission to exhibit through council in November 2021, but still took another 12 months to get them permission to exhibit from the state government as we require through a gateway determination. Now, for a variety of reasons, including the significant level of community interest in this, over that exhibition period, we did grant extensions to a number of community members and government agencies who provided submissions up until the middle of 2023. So we're making certain we're giving substantial and significant consideration to those matters, hence why there's been such a long time consumption for how long this process is taken. And as a result, we've had to seek some extensions from the state government. When we get a gateway determination, there is a time frame in which council is to complete its planning processes. This has already been extended a number of times. The latest extension is until the 14th of December 2024, and there is a risk that if we don't complete those processes, which require further processes past any council resolution, including mapping, liaison with parliamentary council, and the gazettal by the state government, as council does not make changes to the LEP by themselves. We need to make certain there's sufficient time for those processes to occur within the timeframes we've got.
So clarification, if I may, with reference to these two parcels, if we move forward with the bulk and these two parcels want to make representation for their changes, how would that play out? What is that timing?
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. So at this stage, we don't have another immediate process that we were doing ourselves. It's not to stop individual landowners. They can put forward what are called planning proposals, where they come forward with their own recommendations and requests to council, and it goes through that same process of consideration. It becomes our planning process, our planning proposal, should we accept it. Obviously, there is our formal other strategies which we are reviewing, and there's some other lands have been identified as that, such as out of Faguna, and they'll be going through some of those processes. And then there's our processes of our formal review of our LEP.
Okay. Thank you.
You question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Noting that we received this feedback last Tuesday, how long have the proponents and the landowners had access to this recommendation?
Mr. Christie?
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. So formally, obviously, when the council report goes up on our council website, which is on the Wednesday before the council meeting, and councillors get it on the Tuesday before. That's when they've had a chance to read it in its entirety. There has been contact over the week or two prior to that, and advising them but they would not have been able to read the formal recommendations until they became part of the council agenda, and that was published on Wednesday of last week.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan
Thank
wishes
you.
to
Yeah,
speak.
I do. I don't think that's enough time for people to digest some pretty big implications about what's going to happen to their lands. I understand the process has taken some time. I know there has been an opportunity to give feedback. However, I think less than a week to really digest the consequences and what happens in the future, it is not enough time for them, and certainly not enough time for councillors to make that. I understand that the two people here have spoken, but I'm sure there would have been many other people that have spoken. If they had spoken, that they might have some leverage and an opportunity to change. So I don't think these are two isolated cases about people who like to change. So I'd like to move an amendment. It's the second amendment to provide 28 days consultation for people to have further feedback and time to digest the information around their land.
Thank you. We will wait for that to appear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Is that your motion?
Okay, I'd like to move that Council A, receive and note the feedback received through public exhibition. B, endorse the re-exhibition of the planning proposal, Albury Conservation Zone Land Review, as amended by those recommended amendments as consolidated in attachment 3, and place the planning proposal as amended and any supporting material on further public exhibition pursuant to any requirements of gateway determination and Schedule 1, Clauses 4 and 5 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 EPA Act. C, undertake further consultation with the New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure to secure either a new gateway determination or extended gateway determination, seeking an amendment to the Albury Local Environmental Plan 2010 and request the issuing of such, including the delegation of plan-making powers as to enable the public re-exhibition of the planning proposal as amended by those recommended amendments as consolidated in attachment 3 pursuant of the EPA Act.
Does
There's
Councillor
no time frame.
Betteridge wish
Yeah.
to, or is there another D to that? Is there a time frame? Apparently, no. That's their motion as it sits. Do we have a seconder, Councillor Betteridge? Did you wish to second that one at all?
Very happy to second the amendment, Mayor King.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we need to determine, did you wish to speak to this amended motion? Councillor Callaghan.
Just briefly, I I understand it's been a long time, and I understand it's been extended on several occasions, and I'd say in 2018, and then there's COVID and whatnot too. But I think it's important to seek a further extension if the implications are really huge, and give people time to understand what is happening to their properties, and for the councillor group to fully understand too. I don't think a week is enough time for us as well. So I think it's certainly not enough time for the community.
Speaker against, Councillor Baker. Sorry, Councillor Baker, you must be on mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor King. Sorry about that. I understand that anyone who was unhappy with the original zonings were able to put in a submission to have that changed. And I see quite a few were successful. And I think to derail this whole process now for another 28 days and see who might come out of the woodwork with concerns is not very productive, and I'll be voting against the amendment.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you, through Mayor King. I speak in favour of the amendment. And from a personal point, I believe myself to be a reasonably sensible person who absorbs information, and I'm blessed with being quite a good reader. I struggled to absorb all the information in the report, and I read it and then I tried to reread it and I struggled. I spoke with Councillor Callaghan this afternoon and she was relieved that she wasn't the only person struggling with it. So I could not endorse a motion moving forward that I don't fully comprehend and fully understand and have got across. So that's why I'm supporting the amendment. It will not only give people the opportunity to resubmit and to absorb that information as well. It's more about myself. And I think as a councillor, that's the responsibility I have the community. And that's why I'm supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Speaker against, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I speak against the amendment because I think we really need to move forward. I think the whole of Albury needs to move forward. There are a number of areas still, and the staff have explained to us this evening that there are a number. These are not the only 2 cases, and there is a system or there is a process that can be gone through. And I think we need to support our community who are not taken on board with this one and still have issues. We need as a council to assist them to enable that to happen. We cannot continue. I mean, it's taken a very long time, and you yourself have raised Councillor Callaghan has raised that herself this evening, that it has taken a very long time. It's an enormous project, and we do need to comply with the state government requirements. We've requested extensions on a number of occasions, and significant work has been undertaken. There are a few instances where the people or the landowners or other areas are not happy with the outcome. They wish to vary that. I think we should support them in doing so, but and allow the other major or the larger components to be taken forward. There would be people who are waiting on this body of work within our city with regards to development and future planning. So I think we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. I've got a question, if I may, Mr. Christie. Perhaps, I know it's not on the table at the moment, but consideration of deferring to the next councillor meeting, perhaps, so all councillors can absorb all the information thoroughly. What impact may that have on timelines as you've indicated?
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. Obviously, that in essence, if you defer to the next meeting to allow yourselves a few more weeks to consider, that would not, in our opinion, have a substantial impact on our ability to meet that December 14. The concern I would have in regards to extra exhibition is we would also need to make certain that we seek, since we're re-exhibiting, that we're seeking Department of Planning's concurrence to our re-exhibition with who we exhibited, because we need to make certain that it's consistent with their gateway determination, which include consultation with government agencies in addition. And so that's the potential to add substantial timeframes, not just the 28 days of actually being on our exhibition, which this application, sorry, the planning proposal was an exhibition for a substantial period of time greater than that 28 days initially.
And I guess just to follow up, so if it was to be deferred for a couple of weeks, that may give councillors more opportunity to more thoroughly be able to potentially move the recommendation, but really pulling out some specifics that they may have a concern with and treating that separately at a further point in time and potentially approve the bulk of them. So in terms of the couple of options on the table that perhaps deferring to the next council meeting, that could be something that could be worked through with further information for councillors.
Thanks for the question. And again, for you, Mayor King, if the purpose of it is to allow councillors and the community more time to get their heads around the recommendations in the report, then deferral obviously allows more time for that. If the purpose is to seek more public input, then obviously that's where you'd be going into re-notification and the associated timeframes.
Understood. Thanks for clarifying. Any further closed debate? Councillor Callaghan?
It's an interesting one, and I had the deferment up there too. And then I suppose what really has shifted my thinking with regards to consultation is that there is a huge parcel of land that may have been overlooked that should be included in it, that will give us an opportunity for 51 homes that are affordable to be built in our community, and the 28 days will do that. I think it's a missed opportunity if we don't include that. Our LEP and DCP's 2010, it's likely to be 27, 28. It's, you know, if people are wanting to seek these changes to the LEP and DCP, it is costly and it's timely, and there's an opportunity, I think, to really look at the 7 Catherine Crescent, but also to look at the many other anomalies that have been presented tonight and that we have heard from in the feedback from the community. I don't think under a week is enough time for them to respond to what's happening with their land. So that's why I'd be seeking the 28 days. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you. Did a speaker, Councillor Glacken?
If this is lost, where do we go? Do we need to have someone move or foreshadow an alternative motion, or would we be able to put up from the chamber the original motion?
I'll seek clarification from Ms Squire.
Thanks, Mayor King. Councillor Callaghan has moved an amendment. So at the moment you're debating the amendment. If the amendment is not carried and fails, then you'll revert to the first motion that was moved by Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you for the clarification. Councillors, we'll put the we'll seek the appetite for the amended motion to see if it becomes the motion. So those for, those against? Yeah, might call a division on that for clarity. Those for, Councillor Thurley, Callaghan, Bettridge and Baker. Those against, sorry, Cameron. Those against, Baker, King and Glacken. That motion is carried, so that motion becomes the motion. Did you wish to close debate on them? We've already done that, so we just put the motion. Just to be clear, those for? Those for, Councillor Thurley in division, Callaghan, Bettridge and Cameron. Those against, Councillor Baker, King and Glacken. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.5, draft amendment of the Albury DCP 2010 Part 17, access and parking. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. On the Council A receives and notes the contents of this report. B endorses the draft amendment to Part 17, access and parking of the Albury Development Control Plan 2010 for public exhibition purposes. And C places the draft amendment and any supporting material on public exhibition for a minimum of 28 days in accordance with Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 and Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulation 2000.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to second what Councillor Thurley read.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to the motion at all?
Really, this is a matter of some draft policy changes to go out on public exhibition and seek feedback.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Gluckin.
No, sorry, I was wishing to second. I do apologise. I should have taken my
Oh,
part.
no, understood. If there are no speakers, we will put that motion. Councillors, those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM 13.6 Water Filtration Plant, A filter refurbishment contract, number 23/01977. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council pursuant to section 178(1)A of the Local Government General Regulation 2021 New South Wales resolves to accept the tender from Laurie Curran Water Proprietary Limited and awards contract number 23/01977, design and construction of the water treatment plant A upgrade for the tendered lump sum price of $2,013,898, including GST.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King.
If there's no speakers for or against, happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM 13.7 Draft Revised Debt Management and Financial Hardship Policy, Public Exhibition Submissions. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receive and note the submissions received during the public exhibition process. B, adopt the debt recovery and financial hardship policy, and C, places the adopted policy on the public policies and procedures register.
Councillor Bettridge.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
You, Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor King.
Any speakers for or against? Councillor Callaghan, speaker for.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to speak for the motion. This policy is sympathetic to the current cost of living crisis and inflation that we're currently facing. We understand that the community is doing tough, and any measures we can put in place to see people who are struggling with difficult circumstances, such as loss of employment, death, illness, domestic violence, injury or serious accident, or natural disaster, that there are measures in place to support financial hardship to reduce financial stress. Albury City Council wants to work with the community to ensure that they are supported. So thank you for this initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. If there are no other speakers, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.8 Draft Lauren Jackson Sports Centre and Aquatics Facility Stage 2 Draft Master Plan Public Exhibition Submissions. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that council receive and note the submissions received during the public exhibition of the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre and Aquatics Facility Stage 2 Master Plan. B, not adopt the Lauren Jackson Centre and Aquatic Facility Stage 2 Master Plan. And C, does not endorse progression of preliminary design in accordance with the adopted 2024-2028 4-year delivery plan and previously endorsed stakeholder engagement plan.
Councillors, do we have a seconder?
Second.
We appear not to have a seconder for that motion. Do we have an alternate motion? Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you. Thank you. Through Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council A receive and note the submissions received during the public exhibition of the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre and Aquatic Facility Stage 2 Master Plan. B, adopt the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre and Aquatic Facility Stage 2 Master Plan. And C, endorse progression of preliminary design in accordance with the adopted 2024-2028 4-year delivery plan and previously endorsed stakeholder engagement plan.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge, did you wish to speak to him?
Just very briefly, thank you, Mayor King. This is an important project that needs to be fully researched, and this is an integral part to gaining and doing that research, and I look forward to the completed engagement plan. Thank you very much.
Question, councillor Callaghan?
Thank you, Mayor King, to the most relevant staff member. It is stated in the report that the staging suggests that it would be possible to consider the basketball courts prior to commencement of an aquatic facility. How would this likely proceed and work?
Thank you for the question, councillor Callaghan, and through you, Mayor King. That's correct. The staging, the mechanics of the staging would be determined through the next phase of the design, which is preliminary design. And our expectation is as we prepare the preliminary design tender, we would ask that the successful tenderer provide some options and analysis around their staging recommendations.
Sorry, just a follow-up question in regards to that. Sorry, I should have put in my first question. There's even 2 stages with the basketball, being 3 and then 2. Is it possible that that could be 5 in totality and just do it at once for economics?
Thank you for the question. And through you, Mayor King, that's correct. So we would expect a number of different staging options. And one, of course, would be to build all 5 of the recommended courts at once. Another might be stage it with 3 courts built first and then 2 secondly. And then council will then determine at that point in time during the preliminary design stages to which preference they would have.
Thank you, Mr. Glass.
Speaker against, councillor Cameron.
Yes, I'll be brief. I was very pleased, Madam Mayor King, today to read in the newspaper that one of the candidates, a former mayor, is also sharing my concerns about the prohibitive cost of should this indoor aquatic centre proceed. And it was so lovely to see him campaigning on a local government issue. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Cameron. No other speakers for or against? Speaker for, councillor Callaghan.
Look, this is a feasibility study. This is an analysis of what's going to happen. Not any one of us is confused that we don't have $158 million in our back pockets to fund this. But like any project, you have to have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you're not likely to get any funding. So this could look like 5 basketball courts, and in the future, it could look like an indoor aquatic centre. But I think we need to have a vision for our community, and I fully support our inland waterways drowning strategy. And we do not have water all year round for people to learn to swim. And that's my biggest focus in this space. So, you have a plan and you hoped and seek government and funding, and that's how we go about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for, councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. And one of the other significant aspects other than learn to swim is therapeutic water. Now, we know that the new revised hospital on the brownfield site will not include public therapy water, which it had previously some years ago. So we as a council will need to work with state government and federal government to enable or provide for therapy water. It's not just about, it's not only about fun and games. It's not only about learn to swim. It's about providing water to a number of people all year round with different needs. So it's the lap swimmers, it's the water polo players, it's the children learning to swim, it's the swimming carnivals, the school swimming carnivals, and it's also about therapy water. And I think that's one of the areas that we need to push with our endeavours to achieve this facility. And I do note it's looking at the moment about the preliminary design and going out to tender on that. Thank you very much. Or seeking feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge, if there's no further speakers, Councillor Bettridge, did you wish to close debate?
I would just like to close debate by saying we need to continue down this pathway because we need to have a master plan, because we do not have a master plan. We have nothing to shop around to try and receive grant funding. No master plan, no grant funding. We will get the possibility of grant funding, which will then open doors. Or if we don't, the doors will remain closed. This is nothing to fear. This is a positive step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bettridge. In that case, we will put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.9, Draft Early Years and Young People's Plan. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion that council endorse the draft early years and young people's plan and place the draft plan on public exhibition for a period of 28 days. And in the event no submissions are received during the public exhibition period, adopts a draft early years and young people's plan and allocates an additional 20,000 per annum in future budgets for implementation of the draft early years and young people plan 2024-2029. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I'd like to thank our staff for the work that they have undertaken in developing this plan or the draft plan that we will go out to public consultation on. And I think it's also appropriate that we allocate greater funding to this. It was made very clear in our report that we have a significant number of or proportion of our population that fit into that younger age group area. And so this is part of that strategy that we need to ensure that we take care, help grow, develop and foster as a community those people within that age group. Thank you very much.
You. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
No.
Any other speakers for or against? If not, I'll put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 14, officers' reports for noting. CM 14.1, two cities, one community strategy action plan 2022-2025 progress updates 1 Jan 2024 to 30th of June 2024. Councillor Bettridge.
Through Mayor King, I'd like to move that A, the council receives and notes the Two Cities, One Community Strategy Action Plan 2022 to 2025 progress updates 1st of January 2024 to 30th of June 2024, and B, the update is placed on the Two Cities, One Community website.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mayor King. I'm comfortable for the motion to be put.
Thank you, councillors. If there's no speakers for or against, we'll put that motion. Those for, those against? That motion's carried. Thank you. CM 14.2, conference attendance by councillors 1 January 2024 to 30 June 2024. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council receives and notes the report on councillor conference attendance for the period 1 January 2024 to 30 June 2024.
Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it all, or happy to put the motion, councillors? Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 14.3, Albury City Corporate Strategy, Our Future. Councillor Bettridge.
I thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that council receive and note the updated Albury City Corporate Strategy, Our Future.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it, Councillor Bettridge?
No, thank you, Mayor King.
Any speakers for or against? If not, we'll put that motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. We are getting to our youth council. Oh my God, we're keeping you up late. I'm so sorry. I've just CM 14.4, investment balances, June 2024. Councillor Thurley.
Mayor King, I move that council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of June 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to it at all?
No.
Thank you. Councillors, if there's no speakers for or against, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against. That motion is carried. CM 2024 local government elections, caretaker period and electoral matter. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation that council notes the operation of the caretaker period, the regulated period and the code of conduct obligations regarding the use of council resources during the 2024 local government elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Any speakers for or against? Happy to put the motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 14.6, our Youth Council Summary Report, April to June 2024. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that council receive and note the Youth Council achievements as outlined in the Youth Council Summary Report, April 2024 to June 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan, did you wish to speak to the motion?
I attend a fair few of your events, if not as many as I possibly can, if I'm available. The work you do in the community is absolutely exceptional, and the draw that the attendance that you get to your events is absolutely outstanding. What goes into your promotion, and you really, to get that level of attendance, you're really meeting the demand of the community and the young people within it. So, a massive congratulations to you guys and your team and Mandy and the crew that all really support you to bring it all to life. So well done.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I just also wanted to note the great work that you're doing, and you've already hit the ground running with so many things. It only seemed like yesterday that you were elected, and recently, from my experience, the NAIDOC week. I know it's not specifically referenced there, but from start to finish, you're even scraping the ice off the tables and packing up the last chairs after 3. So well done, particular for the leaders that are in the chamber, and acknowledgement of that. Thank you very much. And we will now put that motion, councillors. Those for, those against. That motion is carried, and noted that you've stayed in this room for a very long, arduous time. So our leadership is in great hands with our youth mayor and deputy mayor present. Thank you. CM 15, delegates reports for noting. CM 15.1, MDBA River Reflections Conference 2024, 19 to 20th of June 2024. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council receives and notes the delegates report on the MDBA River Reflections Conference held on the 19th to 20th of June 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second Councillor Thurley's report.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to it at all?
Very briefly, it was attended by several hundred people and quite a few hundred online as well. The issues that come up time and time again with the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, constraints management, and the issue of what's happening in the Northern Basin. I'll take the rest of my report as read.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Just noting I was at the conferences as well, and a special shout out to our events team at the Albury Entertainment Centre, who were able to reshuffle at late notice this event that I think they only had 10 days notice due to the ceiling collapse at the Albury Entertainment Centre. So just a personal shout out for them as well, and noting that we got really good feedback from attendees at the conference about Albury's location and the assistance of the team in getting that a new venue at short notice. Councillors, also noticing that Councillor Cameron has left the chamber briefly, but we will put that motion. Those for, those against. That motion is carried. Thank you. Which brings us to CM 15.2, the Murray-Darling Association 80th Annual Conference, 9th to 11th of July 2024. Again, Councillor Thurley.
Mayor King, I move that council receives and notes the delegates report on the Murray-Darling Association 80th Annual Conference held on the 9th to 11th of July 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second Councillor Thurley's report and recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to it?
Just a couple of things. I did attend in conjunction with Brad Willis from council staff, and I'm sure he's come back with a number of things that are important to him and his group. The issue that came up once again, of course, is the Northern Basin, and the fact that finally the New South Wales government has got most of their water resource plans passed, which now allows the Inspector General to go in and see what the hell has been going on in New South Wales. The other issue which was brought up was buybacks, and a very negative feeling towards water buybacks, given the Minister has announced another 70 gigalitres to be bought back in the Southern Basin. However, very little was said about the environmental pluses or minuses in water buybacks. And I think that's a thing that's still got to play out and needs a lot of attention. But I'll leave the rest of my report for council to read.
Thank you, councillor Thurley. Any other speakers for or against in relation to that? In that case, we will put the motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 16, notice of urgent business. Councillor Glacken.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to raise something that I believe is somewhat urgent. It pertains to a letter to the editor in the Border Mail, the latter half of this week. And I'm seeking assistance from the staff as to how we might deal with matters that were raised in this letter to the editor. It was negative about Albury redevelopment being on a brownfield site, but positive about Wagga and their new hospital. How do we get the message across to our community? And I'm asking our staff how we get the message across to our community. One, that it is a state government issue and not local government. However, we do work with the state government to ensure that we can bring the best opportunity or the best facilities to our community in our region. How do we get the message across that Wagga was indeed a brownfield site and was actually a smaller site than Albury? And how do we get the message across, because these were all points that were raised in this letter to the editor, that the buildings will not be built on top of, there will be new buildings. How can we deal with that because of the misinformation that is in the community?
Ms Squire.
Thanks, Mayor King. Yes, I'm not sure that I would consider a letter to the editor urgent business of this council. Just my perspective. Certainly happy to, follow up. Councillors are kept up to date with the advocacy work that we are undertaking. It is always challenging to rectify misconceptions that might exist in the community. All we can do at this point in time, we are actively encouraging the New South Wales Health Infrastructure to progress their communication, which we understand is happening in mid-August in relation to exactly what will be developed on the site and how those facilities and services will interact with each other, including things like points of care numbers. So hopefully that information that will be provided to everybody in the community in mid-August will dispel some of those myths and certainly some of the speculation that happens in the community in the absence of detailed information. So we'll continue to advocate for that to be released in August as we have been. Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Many misconceptions arise in the Border Mail, and I have first-hand experience of untruths, but perhaps it would be best pointed in a motion or as an agenda item at the next councillor meeting to discuss the hospital.
Any other general business, councillors? Urgent business rather. If not, I declare the council meeting closed at 8:44.
We have got a confidential item.
Oh, yes. Sorry. The other next page. My apologies. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council move into confidential to discuss item CM 17.1, as this is a confidential item exclusive of press or public on the grounds that the matter relates to 2. The matters and information are the following: B, the personal hardship of any resident or ratepayer. Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A2B.
You, Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to move the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Are there any statements or submissions from the public regarding the reasons as identified for this confidential item CM 17.1? There are no submissions received. Do we wish to move into confidential, councillors? Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. So we will close the council 8:45 p.m. The motion to move into confidential has now been carried. For our live stream viewers, we will now say goodbye. You can find the outcome of this confidential session in the meeting minutes, which are published on the Albury City website within 2 business days.